Welcome to Caffeine and Nicotine,
a podcast where we talk about things,
hit our vapes,
and drink coffee.
I'm Tiberius.
And I'm Rain.
Here's a conversation. If there's a spectrum where on one end sits optimism, and on the other end sits pessimism, and there's everything in between.
Does that make, realism the direct middle, or...?
Maybe.
Okay.
I think so. Right, if...
That seems the most logical way to lay it out, but
Yeah, that's how I've been picturing it, but I was leaving it open for potential,
interpretation.
Yeah, if you had a different way that you saw it.
Okay.
Now that's how I kind of see it. It's if optimism is believing things that are going to go better than they actually will, more often than not. And then pessimism is believing that they're going to go worse than they actually will, more often than not. Realism sitting in the middle where things are going to go about as they go.
Yeah.
Makes sense to me. So, seeing as how we sit on we sit on different ends of the spectrum, different places. What would you say are the advantages to your approach, advantages and disadvantages to where you are on these spectrums?
It provides a level of hope and comfort.
Let's clarify where you sit on the spectrum.
Yeah, I tend to be more optimistic. And it provides hope and comfort and, a will to continue doing things, I guess. Because there's numerous examples in the time that we've been together where if I had given up hope or been well, there's no way that this is going to work out, I wouldn't have done those 3 extra things that made something work out.
Yeah.
And so I don't think I would get a lot of places if I just gave in to pessimism. I'm already sort of a depressed person.
Right.
And so, if I just gave in to pessimism, I feel like I would just drown in my depression and be well, it's hopeless. There's no point in going on.
Right. That's fair. What would you say are the disadvantages?
Oh, I'm just absolutely obliterated when things don't go well. When things go that, as poorly as they could go way, which has also happened a lot in the duration of our relationship, I'm wrecked. And it's harder for me to recover from that, especially because being optimistic, I haven't always laid enough groundwork for a cushion if things do go the worst way possible.
Yeah, kind of that's not a main consideration, or at least not enough of a consideration. I don't know what the right way is.
Yeah, well, because I think I tend to get focused on what can I do to make this outcome work? I believe in this outcome, and so I'll put all my energy towards that, and then there's nothing left to fall back on. If that one thing that carries all my hopes and dreams doesn't work out, then I'm just oh, well, now there's nothing. Now we have nothing for this. Fuck.
That's fair. We have run into that a few times. It's alright, we need to construct a completely new plan, because that was the plan.
Yeah.
Would you... I don't know if people have the ability to move themselves in the spectrum. That's something I'd like to explore. I just haven't thought of it at all. But if you could, if that's a thing, would you move to somewhere else on the spectrum, or would you stay where you're at? You said there were some functions of being where you're at that wouldn't exist if you were somewhere else.
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe closer to realism, or I don't know. I've always had a phrase. I don't know where it came from, or if I came up with it, or if I read or heard it somewhere. It was prepare for the worst, but expect the best, or something like that.
Okay.
And so, like, you make all the preparations as if everything's going to go terribly wrong, but you're still hoping for the best outcome.
Yeah.
And working towards that best outcome. But I don't live by that at all. So, but it's not. So I feel like I'd move. Right. So I feel like I'd move closer to that.
Okay.
But I would want to retain some of the optimism.
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely some clear advantages of that.
Well, and there's also, I feel like, some confirmation bias. Because, like, if you're looking for the best things to happen, then you'll look for reasons to be happier in the situations that come as a result of that. Because you put all of that pressure on it, you know?
Yeah.
Like, when we moved in here, and I was like, well, it's terrible, but at least, like, we have space, and...
Yeah.
Garbage disposal, that's nice. Everything else is bad, but it's got its gems, so we're good.
Yeah. I'm not sure I could do that. The biggest part for me, I think, would be the disappointment that comes from when things don't go as well as expected. Like, that's part of why, like, I sit at a much more pessimistic... I'm not sure I would call myself a pessimist per se,
Yeah.
but in, like, relative to where you sit on the spectrum, I definitely am more pessimistic. Like, I'm further on that end of the spectrum.
You're definitely more pessimistic. I feel like you can delve pretty deep into pessimism. Like,
there are moments,
yeah.
yes.
And I feel like a lot of people that are pessimistic want to label it as being realistic, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't feel like that's true nearly as much as people try and claim. Like, I'd say that you sit, like, more pessimistic than, like, on that line of realism.
Oh, yeah. I just don't know... Because, like, there's certain areas where I know that I am consistently pessimistic. And maybe that's what it is there may not be a blanket for, like, you as a person. It might be... It seems as if it is subject-specific, or I want to say genre-specific. For example, like, when I go on stage to sing a song, I'm pretty optimistic about how that's going to go.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think it's going to go, like, amazing, and then the record deal happens, and, like, oh, we're not in the clouds or something, but, like, I'm assuming I'm going to have some fun, it's going to be enjoyable, and someone out in the audience is going to like it. And, you know, whether it happens that way... It's not really a big deal, but, like, that's what I think that's my prediction going into it most days, unless I'm, like, sick or injured in some...
Well, that's also something that you have so much control in.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of other things where I'm, like, consistently optimistic in.
Yeah, because I feel like if optimism is tied that much to things that you have control over, how optimistic is it actually?
Is that just realism aided by having more information about how it's going to go? More math, if you will?
Because, like, I am pretty sure that if I set out to go to the store tomorrow and, you know, purchase coffee, pretty optimistic about that. Like, if we're going to use the word that way. I'm going to come home with coffee,
you know, like, successful mission.
Yeah. But it's not really optimism, I don't think, because, like, I have control over most of that. Like, there's, you know, that small percentage chance I get into an accident, or, you know, they're out of coffee, you know, or something like that, but it's a small percentage.
Most likely it will go
like
as planned.
Yeah.
So we're looking at situations that have a reasonable amount of uncertainty in them, particularly outside of your control. Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure if I tend to be pretty pessimistic about things outside my control.
I do think that, like, furthering your career stuff involves some level of optimism.
Okay.
Because, like, you get to control a lot of variables of that.
Yeah.
But you don't get to control all the big ones. Like, will you have an audience for the thing that you're trying to do? You know, will anybody want to watch it? Because that's not a thing you get to pick. You could put out a thing that's amazing and exactly how you wanted it to be, and nobody could like it.
Right. Or no one could even see it.
Yeah.
You know, like, it could be even worse where they all do like it, or would like it, but never even get their eyeballs or ears on it. Yeah, I don't know if... I mean, I'd love to take the credit for that idea, for that, and be like, yeah, I do display optimism when it comes to that. But I don't think that's necessarily accurate, because as you're saying that, I was thinking, well, I don't necessarily care about those aspects of it. I think what I've done with that is I've just detached from the concept of that because it isn't in my control at all. And I was like, because I was thinking, like, well, success to me, it would be great if there was, you know, you make all this money and you get whatever notoriety and opportunities open up. These things are awesome. If anyone wants to give money or notoriety or whatever, I ain't gonna say no, but for me, it's like, well, have I done the things that I wanted to do? Like, have I made this project? Like, if I said I'm going to make 60 minutes of beatboxing, have I made those 60 minutes? If so, fuck it that some of those videos have 0 views or 3 views or whatever. Like, doesn't matter. I made 60 minutes of what I said I was going to make. So, like, I can feel good with that. That was accomplished. 100% success there.
That's interesting, because, yeah, I don't get that. Like, you've seen that with, like, me making things, especially recently, where I'm like, I'm really bummed that nobody wants to buy this. Like, you know, I did the bread stuff and the flour stuff, and it was just like, oh, nobody hit me up about that. That's unfortunate. Like, it takes a lot of the piss out of it for me, like.
Yeah, that's the part where I'm like, I would run into problems being more optimistic about things, because, like, I feel like those would be constant hits. Like, I have 40 whatever videos out there. Some of them legit do have no views, or 2 views, or 1 view, or whatever. Like, if that was a failure to me, I'd have a lot of those videos be failures right now. Whereas right now I'm like, I'm 3/4 of the way through this project. That's 3/4 of the way to success. You know? I don't know. So, okay, let's go to the pessimism side. Advantages to pessimism are that, obviously, if a thing goes wrong, like something outside of your control goes wrong, it's not necessarily surprising a good deal of the time, because you already thought about this going wrong.
Yeah.
Which means if you can use that, if you can be active on that pessimism, because there's pessimism and then sort of like that nihilistic apathy that comes with it. Well, it's like, well, it's going to go wrong and there's nothing I can do about it. I don't necessarily feel like that's the way that I experience pessimism a lot. It's more like, it's going to go wrong, so what can we do about it? Like, this person is going to not come through on time. What can I do when that goes wrong? Like, what is my next step when this thing falls through, or this person doesn't do whatever, or this situation randomly becomes the worst version of itself? Like, what is my next step? I can kind of prepare ahead for that. So when that thing goes wrong, instead of being terribly disappointed, it's just like, no, we got this. Plan B. You know, move ahead. Downsides obviously are, it seems to be a less pleasant thing to interact with from like another, you know, outside of me perspective. Especially if you are someone who's looking for that hope. Right. It's exactly the opposite.
Yeah, you do have a habit of just trying to crush my hopes. Where you're like, I don't know what you're getting so excited about. This is clearly going to go wrong. And I'm like, but it might not. And you're like, okay. but it's gonna.
So let me double back for a second. since, and maybe you answered this with your thing on confirmation bias, right? Like paying more attention to it. I was going to say, but how do you contend with, or how do you rationalize isn't the word I'm looking for, reconcile all the times that things don't go as well as you? Like, how do you continue to be optimistic when the things don't always go?
Yeah, I do think it has some to do with that, like, confirmation bias and that, like, looking for reasons why this is better than it actually is, or, there's hope in it or whatever.
Okay.
Because, like I said, this, moving into this situation, not ideal by any means.
No.
But the way I look at it was like, we were facing homelessness. We're not homeless.
Right.
So that's awesome.
Yes.
Like, despite the circumstances under which we came to live here, which are not great, and what's about to happen with this living situation, which is also not great, that's, 2 months that we would have, I'm not sure what we would have done,
Yeah.
So, like, there's that, and like I said, there's more space here than where we were staying, and, there's just a bunch of, like, little things that add up to it being not an L, Like,
Yeah.
I don't count it as a loss, because it's not to me.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of it's just genuine, like, looking
Okay.
for the good in the situation.
That's interesting, because I feel like we got to the same conclusions, but by completely different routes.
Yeah.
Right, like, because my assumption was like, oh, we're going to be homeless.
Yeah.
Like, that's what's in our future. Boom. Get, like, mentally prepare for this. This is happening. Right. And so then when this living situation occurred, it was also a victory. It was also not an L, because it was also not homelessness.
Right.
And so, like, I was pleasantly surprised. There was things that I don't enjoy about this, but I was able to take them full in stride. Like, no worries at all for a good deal of them, because it was, again, a home. It was a place that we could live inside.
Yeah, but moving into this situation, you were like, nope, this is worse than homelessness. And I was like...
The process was terrible.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. There were so many ways to go about that, and I feel like the way that we ended up having to was the least comfortable.
Yeah.
It was drawn out. It
really was. All signs pointed to it being fail.
Because for me, I'm like, if we're gonna be homeless, let's do it without all this effort. Like, we could be spending this time doing other things. Oh, it was so bad.
Yeah, that's true. You're not wrong.
So maybe that was even just more
been
frustration.
A lot worse, but
yes. Yeah.
I'm also a person that if I truly think something's going to be terrible, and I'm, like, being pessimistic about it, I get overwhelmed by that. Like, it's an all-consuming thing for me. It's not like, oh, well, it's probably going to go terrible, let's do these things. Like,
Yeah.
It's like a drowning.
Yeah.
So.
That's fair. I was thinking about, like, we'll double back to a different thing with the career stuff. And you were talking about the optimism there. And that's one way that I kind of deal with that, again, because I don't think it's optimism, is the idea of, like, mathing a lot of these things out, where it's like, this is a numbers game. And I feel like that's what I do in a lot of the situations where you could even potentially mistake me as an optimist, like the ones that I was mistaking as, is like, no, we just math it up until so many odds are pointing towards this will go this direction, or at least this range of directions that you can predict, that now you don't have to be optimistic about it. You just made it so likely to occur that we can just expect it. if things go poorly, be prepared or whatever, but there's very little reason for them to go any other way than expected.
Yeah. So would you want to adjust your pessimism if you could?
Potentially, kind of. I feel like it would be nice to have a default mode of being able to trust other people a little more, and trust that like I could count on things going well if I don't have full control over, like control issues sort of thing. Like if I didn't, I can trust that someone else is going to do the thing and I don't have to do it my damn self. I'm sure that would make day to day easier for me in those realms. I wouldn't want to have any more attachment to that, though.
Yeah.
I would want to be able to still, be robust if I run into something other than what my optimistic point of view was, and I'm not sure how I would do that.
Yeah.